Hello, welcome to this Cycling Life Leadership Bytes. Today I go back in time quite a lot of years because I think it's about 25 years ago that I for the first time met our today's guest, Mike Wienold. He's originally from California, but lives now in Durango, Colorado. And we met, I think, in 96 or something. But maybe, hey, Mike, welcome. Introduce yourself. You can do that better than I can.
Thanks for having me, Bernard. It's a real pleasure. It's been good seeing you and chatting with you after 25 years. And you're right, 1996 was when we met. I think at the train station in Ostend there.
Yeah.
Like Bernard said, I'm originally from California. I grew up in Central California in a small town near Fresno. And then I went to school in Sacramento for an engineering degree and lived in Sacramento for about 10 years before moving to Southern California. And from Southern California, I moved the family back east to Greenville, South Carolina, and then spent some time in Raleigh, North Carolina before landing here in Durango, which the plan is that this will be it, Durango till the end. It's a great place. There's a lot to do here, so we're looking forward to these years here in Durango. Mm-hmm. I started cycling pretty early on. I mean, I think kids growing up in the 70s and 80s rode bikes to get around and had some freedom. And that turned into racing, and it, led to a lot of great memories from my childhood and into my 20s, ending up with Anne and Bernard in Belgium. That was my, my big stab at trying to do things bigger. Uh-huh. And probably what said, okay, time to go back to school and get on with life. But it was a great way to grow up, and ultimately the people that you meet along your journey, especially through cycling, are the ones that make everything memorable. And there have been so many of them, and obviously you and Anne were a huge part of that. And even though we have not always kept contact over these years, it's always been in the back of my mind how great an experience that was.
Well, I have seen your family grow, and if I am not mistaken, your oldest son is now a little bit younger than you were when you came over. But is that the guy that went already studying abroad as well?
So the one that was studying abroad is my second oldest son, and he's a 19-year-old now. My oldest is 21. He's going to school at the University of Maryland and he lives in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So my second son, Peter, he was a foreign exchange student his junior year of high school. And he lived in Chile for a year, lived on a working ranch, and just had the time of his life. And I think, a lot of that is because of the stories that he heard from my travel and spending time abroad, riding and things like that. It really inspired him to do things like that.
Okay, so like in those days when you talked with him and obviously you inspired him, what were things that you were telling him that you think now inspired him to go abroad and to try things out? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I mean, I think, he and I can relate. We have that same spark of curiosity about what's over there. But I think just the knowledge that someone in your immediate family has, made those big plans and done the things kind of takes some of the fear of maybe it can't be done or maybe it's too difficult out of it. So, certainly the stories about the travel and the experiences, and of course, in my case, racing bicycles, was, what my stories to him are all centered around. But certainly, when you hear things that your parents do or see big things, that's not on TV. It's not removed from your life. It's right there. And I think that's just the ability to say, yes, I can do something big and it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I think is what motivated him.
Mm-hmm. So understanding your life, you were pretty entrepreneurial later. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that is not a surprise, because back in the days, coming over to race in Belgium was pretty entrepreneurial as well, I guess. Can you give me some of those experiences where that are still in your memory, but you would have never thought about before?
Well, sure. And similar to what I was saying about Peter, for me, the biggest thing about my cycling life is that when you just talk about it or think about it, a lot of it seems pretty far-fetched. Traveling to another continent to race, or spending, just riding 200, 300, 400 miles a week in preparation for racing, and all of the weekend travel, half of the year or more. Those things all require a lot of planning, a lot of preparation, getting yourself through a lot of rough times where it's just not working out. And having been through that, starting at a very young age in that sport, where it's hard every week, it's hard every weekend, and you get one good result out of 50 attempts or 100 attempts. It really prepares your mind for the monotony of planning, executing a business, and even getting into careers, like if you're not an entrepreneur, getting yourself into a bigger career or something that's challenging. But it really sets the stage for the state of mind that you need to be able to set big goals and get there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're not talking about unrealistic goals. It's a matter of seeing, like, well, hey, if that guy can do it, then maybe I can do it. But having the mindset to say, okay, here's how I'll do it. Here's how I'll get there. And I think that was one of the big things for me that came out of my cycling life.
Mm-hmm. Where would you put discipline in that entire equation? Like, where would you put that? Was that very important for you, or was that just something, or was that just normal? Where would you put that?
Yeah, discipline's right at the top. And I was not a disciplined child. Some things came easy to me that I could excel at, but if they did not come easy to me, I didn't really pursue them. And this is, of course, as a kid. And it wasn't really until I saw racing as something that I wanted, bike racing as something I wanted to do, that the discipline started to come, because, it's not easy. And, when you're racing, even as a junior, you have to do 50, 60, 70-mile training rides or longer. And it took my mind to a different place, where, hey, if I'm going to succeed in May, I have to be training in January. I have to be racing and probably doing badly in February, and not get frustrated. You've got to keep building up your season every year until you're able to reach your goals. And it's that discipline that I think really builds up through sports, but specifically for me in cycling, that led to achievement of goals. And of course, I don't consider myself a gifted athlete, so my results had to be pleasing to me. And while I did have good results at times, it's really that discipline that gets you through, and sees you through to the finish of the season.
Mm-hmm. Good. When you say you didn't have that discipline right away as a young boy, how did you get into that? Meaning, did you teach yourself, or were there people you could talk to get that going, or how did that work? Because I imagine that the discipline did not fall out of the air, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It doesn't fall out of the air. And I know people who just, you see the discipline in them from the beginning. In fact, luckily, several of my kids, you could see it just right at the beginning. They had discipline. They could do whatever they they needed to do, and they knew what they had to do. But yeah, it was a combination of the two things you mentioned, having some example of people around you, who have discipline and you can see what they do. But then also figuring, I have a personality where I have to figure things out on my own. And it doesn't take too many races where you get dropped or can't finish, or whatever the bad result is, that you realize, like, okay, maybe taking Tuesday off was a bad idea, or maybe drinking beer before the night before was a bad idea. And so you develop that discipline to do the right things and see through what you need to do.
If as an American, I think it's not an obvious choice that you choose for cycling. I mean, it's not the major sport in the US. So what was attracting you so much to choose for cycling more than baseball or football or whatever? I mean, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not really a gifted athlete, and that was particularly true for a lot of the mainstream sports. I didn't have any snap in my arm to throw a ball. I didn't have a lot of speed or power, things like wrestling or some of those types of sports. And I did, the eye-hand coordination, having to be physical and control an object, just really never sat all that well with me. And then, as I was riding my bicycle as a means of transportation, the first thing that really came across for me was at age 12, I did a 40-mile charity ride, and I finished the ride with the front group of riders, and I got a lot of positive feedback about how my cycling was. And so that excited me and made me feel good, because I'd never had a lot of athletic praise before. And then later that summer was the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. And the road race was just, for whatever reason, it was so spectacular, that was kind of the point where I figured that that's what I really want to do. So I spent the rest of the year saving for a racing bike. I got what at the time was a USCF license, USA Cycling now, and started. So at age 13, that was how I started racing. And pretty much after that, in my first race, I got good results. In fact, the experience of that was fantastic. Really quickly things went, and I think I was in the age 14, 15 or 13, 14 age group. And it was so fast, and I was doing everything I could to hang on, and the pace let up a little bit, and I realized I was the last guy. There were only like 6 guys left, and I ended up getting 6th in that first race. But it was the first time that I'd had a result in any sports. And then it just went from there. It was, an immediate love after that.
Wow, you must have been in love, because coming to Europe is not for everybody. I mean, there's more at hand than just riding your bike or loving to ride your bike. In a minute ago, we were talking about discipline. So in a way, you build up habits, in doing things. How would you place habits now in your daily life as what you're doing now, and also as a father of a big family? Where would you place that? Can you give me an insight on that?
Sure. Yeah. You quickly realize that if you're going to do something serious, that there has to be some methodology to it. And really, those are the habits that build. You figure out what your methodology is, and then I think that becomes ingrained in your personality and carries over into pretty much everything you do. And for me, and I suspect for all athletes and all entrepreneurs and, pretty much anything you do, that people break things up into 3 major categories. And that is your planning, then your preparation or training, and then your execution. And of course, for cycling, the planning is starts at the beginning of the year or even before. What's my season going to look like? What are my objectives? What are the milestones? Where do I need to peak? And then your training really, becomes tailored to meeting those milestones and objectives. But then you've got to follow through. You've got to be at the big races. When you're feeling bad, you've got to coax yourself through. So much of that end game of getting yourself through the big events and completing your year and then reevaluating. And when I look at my career, it's almost identical. I became an engineer, and pretty quickly, I'm not so much theoretical or design engineer. So I pretty quickly went into project management, and basically that whole industry or that whole career path follows what I just explained. It's a matter of, you're planning, you're training, you're executing.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much look at everything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Makes total sense. Because of your cycling and like you said, you were not the most gifted athletes. There were more races, I guess, that you did not get the great result compared with the wins or whatever. So I think you learned to kind of cope with that, to live with that. In your life now, like if there is something not going the way you want it to go, you're handling that obviously, but are you handling that based on some of the experiences you got while you were a cyclist and while you were, for example, here in Belgium? Or can you give some insight there?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And I think, again, it's a matter of what gets ingrained in your personality and how you approach things. And, when you do, I don't know if I ever had a year where I did 100 races, but a lot of guys are racing, 70, 80, 90, 100 races a year. For me, I'd have half a dozen really good results that I could boast about. So that means, if I did 50 races, then, 40 plus of those were maybe disappointing results. And so you start to see disappointment as not so much as a major letdown, but, it's a point when you can reevaluate, okay, why did that not go how I anticipated? What do I need to do to change that? Sometimes it's the luck of the draw and you just move on. Other times it's something you can fix. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and again, it's really just, how that gets ingrained in your personality that you approach, things in your life. And, a major moment in my life, which was not too long ago, it was about 2.5 years ago now. I had a very serious health problem that I nearly did not survive. And coming out of that, it was basically like being right back in the racing scene. My mind went into, okay, what do I need to do to recover? It's not easy. I'm moving like a 90-year-old man, and, but you get up every day, you do a little bit more exercise, and it just was a 6-month process just to kind of become normal again. And I really attribute the discipline and the mindset that I developed in cycling to getting through that. It was a big point in my life.
Okay, well, I'm grateful that you want to share that, because obviously you told me in preparation of those talks, you told me those things, but and I wasn't sure I could bring it up, but since you bring it up yourself, it's great, because to me, this looks like a huge achievement. I mean, that's a victory of life even. And then attributing that to what you learned partly in cycling is just great, because you can't be fight for more than for your life, I guess, huh? So yeah. That's a wonderful thing. So those type of things, when tomorrow a kid from in your neighborhood comes and say, Mike, I know you were in Europe. I want to ride my bike as well. What type of advice do you give the kid or the young person?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, for me, the biggest advice I'd give someone in that situation, and similar to like my son who wanted to be an exchange student or had ideas about it, is, seize the opportunity. Opportunities like this have to be created. You make the opportunities. But if you let them pass you by, especially with sports, as you age, the ability to take on challenges like going to a different continent where the heart of a sport might be, uh, those are probably not going to come by again. Whereas everything else can probably wait. You can wait on a lot of the things that will be there in your late 20s, into your 30s, into your 40s. Those will always be there. But seize your opportunities, and the other thing too is understand who you are, and you will know what weaknesses you can overcome and what weaknesses you probably can't. And I think that's a good, once you know those things, you can decide what's realistic for you, and then what challenges you can rise to actually meet. But I think seize the opportunity is the big advice that I would give.
I think what you're saying now is kind of, that was part of the base of the advice I started to give when more guys started to come to my program, because the moment you were there, it was not even a program. We were just hosting some cyclists, But later I installed my program, and I always told everybody, make sure when you go back that go find your values, your talents, discover your passions, and do something with impact. And in a way, it was from talks back in the days that I had with you guys, like, why are you here? Who are you? Do you know? Because I wanted to make sure that everybody of you guys turned back home with a bag of value experiences. Do you understand what I'm saying? That at least you knew who you were.
Yeah.
Because not everybody can become a professional cyclist. Even for the guys over here, it's hard. I think it's like 1 to 500. So for you guys, it's even harder. But I wanted to make sure that you guys at least spended money that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? And then I think that you guys were more forced to really look at yourself like, who am I? What do I really want? I heard that in what you were saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And immediately following my experience in Belgium racing, I started my first year at the university coming back. And I won't say that it was easy, but the way that I was able to zero in on it, because at that point I knew education's probably what I should focus my efforts on. I mean, I continued racing for 4 or 5 more years, but I really saw it more as a lifestyle at that point, rather than trying to build into a better racer. But it really, for me, made going through the 4 years at the university pretty easy in terms of the getting through it. The work was hard, but it always seemed like it was such a daunting task, or nearly impossible, to get through school. And getting, after my experience in Europe, it just was easy to do. I mean, it was easy to execute.
If I would ask you, can you sum up like 3 things in some short sentences that really took you through life with an advantage? Meaning, because you came to Europe to race, can you sum up 3 things that you would not have gotten as experience when you stayed in US?
Yeah, I think the big takeaways for me are that everything takes work, right? I mean, you can't get through anything, even simple things. It takes the work. And number 2, not everything's guaranteed to work out. So you've got to experience the downside of everything you do and get through it, and cherish the upsides of it. And that third thing is that when you see the results of the work, it's so rewarding. Whether it's a win in a race, or getting a job or landing a contract for your business, when you get those results, the everything else that it took, just melts away. Any of the hardships become worthwhile. And I think that's the big value is seeing that hardship to get what you need is very worthwhile.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mike. That was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. I mean, getting you back, and I gotta thank you again to react on my vlogs, because that's how we got in contact again. So thank you. Hey, thank you, audience, to listen and look at us again. And if you like this, please give us a thumbs up, like us, give us comments, and we will see each other next time at this Cycling Life Leadership Bites. See you next time.